Okay, you can see my screen? Yeah, great. Thank you. So welcome everyone. Good to see everybody. I can see there is some snow on the trees. Minu, is that your, you have some snow, right?
It's almost melting, little bit left, almost melting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was, we had snow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there is some light, it's already 8:30 and
Yeah, it's getting better now. The sun is, yeah. Michigan
Okay.
is missing you. Come back.
Yes, I'm going to be there in 3 months. I'm look forward to it.
Yeah, same here.
So we'll get started. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam-anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Buddhe Pullara-vindayata-patra-netra Yena tvaya bharata-taila-purnaha Prajvalito jnanamayah-pradipaha Prapanna parijataya totra vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamritaduhe namaha Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tva sarva papepyah Mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So welcome everyone. We are still on chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. And in reflection time, I thought, as I mentioned last week, it is a good idea for us to compare similar shlokas which are there in chapter 2, 3, and 4. And I can tell you, I'm still working on that project. I have not completed that yet. And certainly, as we put them together, we can take chunks of it and do it. But for those of you who are interested, I thought, this might be a good time also to review back the shlokas from 2, 3, and 4. For example, in chapter 2, we were introduced to the lakshanas of Sthita Prajna, the wise person, who is the mature person, as I'm using maturity in a very loose way here. But when we think about the progress of an individual, in the materialistic sense, of course, with the amount of millions of dollars or houses or, all those things. But in the spiritual sense, the idea is you're going even beyond what materialism can offer. And in fact, it is the path for a human being. So in chapter 2, we saw the lakshanas of the wise person. And the same thing we are seeing in chapter 4. We did see a few of them in chapter 3. And then this aspects of meditation, which was briefly introduced in chapter 2. We saw a little more in 3 and 4. So there is, from a learning perspective, there is a lot of comparison we can do. And we can see how they all links together in a thread. So this is why, I'm also still working on how to present this at the end of chapter 4. When at the end of chapter 4, we will look into a lot of those. But I just wanted to give you a heads up on where we are heading. So one of the questions that kind of came up last week is really the difference between Brahma and Brahman. And Amlan pointed out that, Sharda ji always refers to Brahma as Brahma ji. The minute you put G into it, you automatically know it's a person, So that's the biggest difference is Brahma versus Brahman. Brahman, you could almost say, is the Sopadika Ishvara aspect of it in the form of the creator. So Upadika, Saha Upadika, or with Upadis. So, but Brahman is this absolute reality, consciousness, reality, Om. The Brahman is everywhere. I'm just giving you all these words, but as we go deeper, we will be going deeper into it. But Brahman is that consciousness. In fact, it is all nothing but Brahman. That is how we say. But Brahmaji is the creator aspect in Maya. I was hoping to put at the last minute, I thought of this picture in self-unfoldment in the Maya chapter, which really brings out that, but then there's so much in that figure that I thought it would be confusing. So I did not want to put everything, but suffice to say, Brahma is the creator. Brahman means the absolute reality. And again, let's not confuse this with Brahmin. Brahmin is a class, the Sattvic class. And interesting, I saw something on Facebook about this lady called, she's a professor, Amy Batts from Pennsylvania, the University of Pennsylvania. There was one blurb about how she was denouncing the Brahmin women, the leadership Brahmin women class or something. And it was a pretty negative thing on Twitter. You can look up that too. So anyway, that's a side thing, comment there. But all these names can be confusing, but just thought I'd mention this here. So in chapter 4, we started looking at the Guru Parampara. And then from Guru Parampara, we looked at how Lord Krishna introduced himself as the avatar, saying that this is, hey, Arjuna, this is who I am. And then he explains about how, when he was born, and then what does he do, what really is his work. I mean, this is how we define ourselves, right? We define by, this is where I'm born, I'm born to my parents, and this is where I go for my work, and or this is who I am, I'm a mom, those things. So this is, Krishna also introduces that himself in that manner. And then from there on, he talks about, because he describes himself as a Lord, we found then he shows a variety of devotees. We saw this in shlokas almost 10 to 15. In the first, the Guru Parampara was discussed in shlokas 1 to 4. The avatar was discussed in shlokas up to 9. Varieties of devotees was discussed up till shloka number almost 15. And then we discussed what is action, what is inaction. And here the role of really of ourselves as the ego came into play. Whenever I do without a doership, that is the inaction aspect of it. And that is what Lord Krishna was trying to show. And this was compared to when the thought that Arjuna would have had in his mind that, he wanted to get away from action to inaction by going to Himalayas. But Krishna was saying, you can't do that. You have to stay here. You have to do your duty. But then how to do the duty is to do it without that ego bhava. And that is really inaction. So the transition from action to inaction, we discussed about it. And finally, the Karma Yoga's grand parade, which is really as a Karma Yogi, how you can lead a life in this world. And that is where we saw the 4 or 5 verses up to 23 of how one can lead our life in this world with this knowledge. And once we have the knowledge, how we can detach ourselves from the actions we are doing. We can still do all the actions. We can be the mom, we can be the manager, everything, but yet it can be done with detachment. And then this idea of what is really desirelessness, and then leading to the calmness. So all this was discussed. And we saw this picture last time in a little bit of a different context than normally how we use this picture. The idea was, when I am in this ashram, when I am doing all this work, literally the idea is that just like how in an ocean, which is nothing but water, and you see a lot of turbulence, all these waves and everything. So you cannot imagine an ocean without the waves. So too, for all of us who are in this Grihastha ashram, our duties are like these waves. Waves will never stop. Duties will come, duties will go. Today, I'm a mom. Tomorrow, I'm a grandmom. So as a grandmom also, I have some duties towards my grandchildren and everything. However, the idea is, even in the midst of all these duties, I have to maintain that sense of what we talked about in those shlokas, this absence of detachment, this absence of desirelessness. And the fact is ultimately that kartritva bhava, that I am doing this, that aspect has to go. So duties may come, duties may go, waves may come, waves may go, but in and through all this, the recognition that I am not this ego, but I am that absolute Brahman, that needs to be kept in mind. And that is why this picture is very important from that aspect. So now moving on, we discussed last time what is that Brahmarpanam. So if I see Brahman everywhere, how do I bring that aspect into my life? So therefore, that shloka of Brahmarpanam, we discussed it, and we will move on to, at least I'm hoping we can do up to 26, 27, and 28 today, where we're going to discuss about the sadhanas, the preparation that is needed in order for me to recognize Brahman everywhere, to recognize that I am Brahman and that Brahman is everywhere. That is the reason the shlokas, all these literally 12 yajnas, they are all in this thing, and we will look into those. So let's chant shlokas 14 to 24. Atha chaturto dhyayah Shri Bhagavan uvacha Namam karmani limpanti Name karma phale spruha Iti mam yo bhijanati Karma bhirna sabadhyate Evam jnatva kritam karma Purvairapi mumukshubhihi Guru karmaiva tasmatvam Purvaih purvataram kritam Kim karma kima karmeti Kavayopyatra mohitaha Tatte karma pravakshyami Yajnatva mokshase ashubhat Karmano hi api bodhavyam Bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha Akarmanascha bodhavyam Gahana karmano gatihi Karmanya karma yah pashyet Akarmani cha karma yaha Sabuddhiman manushyeshu sayuktah kritsna karma krit yasya sarve samarambhaha kama sankalpa varjitaha jnanagni dagdha karmanam tamahuh panditam buddhaha tyaktva karma phala sangam nitya tripto nirashrayaha karmanyabhipravrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha tyaktva karma phala sangam nitya tripto nirashrayaha karmanyabhipravrittopi naiva kinchit karoti saha nirashiryata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha shariram kevalam karma kurvannapnoti kilbisham yadrichhalabha santushtaha dvandvatito vimatsaraha samasiddhava cha kritvapi na nibadhyate gata sangasya muktasya jnanavastita chetasaha yajnaya charatah karma samagram praviliyate. I think we can skip this. We did this last time. So then now we're coming to the variety of verses. So we saw that the verse 24, Brahmarpanam, we saw last time, where it is the yajna of the highest individual. And for such a person, the entire world is Brahman. So he sees Brahman in everything. So the example is a good example to think about is for people like for me and for everybody. When I look at the world, I look at the world in the form of objects. It is just the objects that comes to mind, right? I see the table here, I see my sofas, I see the cup, I see this, I interact with them. And even when I see these things, many times I superimpose even more than what I see. I see it as my cup or my child, or this minus comes into play, right? And on top of the minus, there is also this aspect of, oh, not only it is minus, but my child, oh my God, my child looks different today. What's happening? So the superimposition keeps on going so much, not only the minus, but how, so the why, the what, the how, all these things comes into play. But for a realized person, the person looks at the same thing. That person looks at it as if it is all Brahman. That is the big difference, and that is the Brahma Drishti that we saw in shloka number 24. So Swami Chinmayananda, he reminds us that if only I perform all my actions without any ego and not motivated by any egocentric desire, then I can also start to develop that spirit of yajna, of looking at that. And the example is, for you and I, we look at the world as like, we are interacting with it. But for a realized person, the person looks at the world as if the world is a movie screen. And in that screen, everything that is happening is like a movie. So just like movies are temporary and will not be there, and ultimately it's only the movie screen, that person, a person who is at that level, is really looking at the whole world as nothing but Brahman, and Brahman is the substratum. So just like how the movie screen is the substratum for the movie, right? So I came across this very beautiful beautiful quote of Swami Vivekananda, which is really at a extremely high level, which tells you that, you know, our even the scriptures, they will only point out, to what this Brahma Drishti is, what this Brahman is. And they cannot really show you, you know, this is also a question that comes up is, you know, how do I really know that this person is Brahman? Or how do I know that I am Brahman? So this is why it's the beauty of the scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, and all Bhagavad Gita, which is called the fourth Upanishad, all the Upanishads, they only can point out what this Brahman is. So I'll just read out this quote because I know there's too many words here and it's hard to read it. But another thing I wanted to point out, Amlan's friend Sriram had asked, you know, whether these all this PowerPoints, you know, is it available? If you remember, long time back, I had created a Google Drive, but I have been bad. I have not made this into PDFs and have not put there. But I can start putting them now that I'm in Kerala. Maybe I can take a couple of days to make all this into PDFs and put it into the Google Drive. But at any point in time, if anybody wants it, these PowerPoints are all available in the form of PDFs. I just remembered that I had not answered Amlan. So Amlan, please do convey to Sriram. I can send this as a PDF at any time. So the Vedas cannot show you Brahman because I am that already, you know. So that's what, such a beautiful quote, you know, the Vedas cannot show you Brahman. You are that already. They can only help to take away the veil that hides the truth from our eyes. You know, so that's what the scriptures are doing. All this knowledge, the knowledge is just uncovering that that truth. In Ishavasya Upanishad, there is a beautiful shloka, you know, Hiranmayena Patrena. I have to go back and bring that shloka again. Suddenly remember that he says, you know, this Hiranmayena, the truth is like the gold patra, you know, but it is covered by this veil. I have to remove that veil to uncover that gold, that which I am, you know. So it says here, they can only help to take away the veil that hides the truth from our eyes. The first veil is to vanish is ignorance. Ignorance in the sense that today I'm ignorant of the fact that I'm Brahman. I think I'm this Sunitha. That's the ignorance. So the first veil is to remove that ignorance. And when that is gone, the papa goes and the desire ceases, selfishness ends, and all misery disappears. So in just one or two lines, the entire knowledge is revealed here. And this cessation of ignorance can only come when I know that God and I are one. In other words, identify yourself with Atman or Brahman, not with the human limitations. So disidentify yourself with this body and all pain will cease. This is the secret of healing. The universe is a case of hypnotism. Dehypnotize yourself and cease to suffer. So very, very powerful words. I know it is pretty late in the night to really digest this whole thing. And I can even just put the quote alone in our chat or something like that, because it requires some deep thinking about it, you know. I guess I have the advantage because it's early morning here. You know, I can understand, but I know it's hard for you in the evening. But it's I put this in relation to the chapter 24, chapter 4, shloka number 24, to say that the jnanis, you know, they recognize Brahman everywhere, and the drishti, you know, they're able to see that. So that's what we saw in shloka number 24 about Brahmarpanam Brahmahavihi Brahmagnav Brahmanahutam Brahmaiva Tena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. the word Brahman comes in 6 places. And we compared this to the yajna itself, and all the components, which we will see in this next one. I just, last time I mentioned that it's a yajna, but the whole idea is here, we say the karya karaka phalam, the act of doing, the instruments which are used for doing an act, and the result of this act. All of them is nothing but Brahman. So here, I've shown the instruments can be the ladle which you use for offering, the mantras that is chanted, when we say swaha, swaha, those mantras, the devatas to whom it is offered, then the phala, the fruit of why I'm doing it. And those days, this whole ritual was part of karma kanda. Karma kanda is, in karma kanda, you do these rituals to gain the higher lokas. Like, for example, people earn a lot of money, and then what do? They go to Las Vegas or something, and they burn it off, right? I mean, Las Vegas is so glittering, glamorous, and people aspire to go to Las Vegas. It's a sign of the height of materialism, right? So too Swarga. Swarga was considered where people always stay young, and whatever you want, you can get it at the beck of a call. So that's the idea of the rituals at that time. So Desha, Kala, all this is considered part of this rituals here. The Havihi is the oblation, which is the ghee or the samagri, the firewood. And the person whom the offering is made, that is also Brahman. The fire into which the offering is made, that is Brahman. The goal to attain, that is also Brahman. So this is the yajna of the wise, enlightened person, because such a person sees Brahman everywhere. And last time I showed this example that ultimately, just like in all these jewelry, it is nothing but gold alone. Or another example where ultimately the same picture I have here in a different context, which is in this ocean, which is full of waves and bubbles and everything. Ultimately, it is nothing but water. So too, this whole thing is nothing but Brahman. So now, coming to why is Brahman really chanted before eating, right? Brahma, why is this shloka chanted before eating? So the idea behind this is, even for us to live, correct? Ultimately, for our whole life depends on the simple act of eating, right? So to live, we have to eat food. So food is very necessary for our existence. And whatever the type of this food, when one is hungry, one really enjoys whatever is given to us. So this is that even at the moment of that eating, that aspect of eating, one should not forget this great truth that everything is nothing but Brahman. So that is one reason why you would say that you chant Brahmarpanam, because food is probably among all the acts that we might indulge, for sure, eating is, nobody would go without eating. You may go without bathing, or you may go without working or whatever, but eating is very important. So even at that moment of that simple act of eating, think about Brahman. So think about Brahman. So 6 times Brahman is pointed out there, to think that ultimately I am that Brahman and this is why I'm eating. So it's a special act that we perform every day. So this is actually now a very perfect act for us to perform this in the form of yajna. Yajna meaning, where we said it's a sacrifice, where I'm sacrificing myself in this whole thing. And actually one of the yajnas is this coming up, which is an extension of this verse. We'll come to it. But so that is the idea of chanting. And so in this Brahmarpanam, in this act of eating, all the 6 aspects of the ritual is mentioned. It is that arpanam, or that oblation where I'm offering. Then the food is the havihi. The person who is eating, that person is who's doing the offering, the person who's doing the offering. Then the stomach, where the digestion happens, the fire of digestion, that's the fire on which we are offering the food. So the goal, then ultimately, the idea is the goal for which I'm reaching, which is Supreme Brahman, or, I'm nourishing this body, which is acting as a vehicle for me to take me close to Brahman. So that is my goal. So that is the idea behind why we really chant this shloka before we eat. And literally we can, one whole hour can be spent just on why Brahmarpanam is chanted because of this whole idea. But again, going back is, even the materials for Brahmarpanam, everything is very natural, environmentally friendly, like we talked about the wood, which is used for the ladle, and we come from the environment. So many different ideas too. But ultimately, the idea here is, even in a simple act of eating, when we chant Brahmarpanam, I'm reminded of that ultimate reality. And by doing so, it brings not considering that I'm this person. So the detachment, everything also is comes into play here. I know I probably lost a minute here, right? I think I froze for a second. So any other thoughts here? I'm going to stop here for a second to let that digest. Any questions, any thoughts, or anything additional that somebody wants to say about this chanting of Brahmarpanam before eating?
Hare Om, Sunitha ji.
Yeah, go ahead, Amlan.
Yeah, I really do not know the reason of. First time I heard about I know that they chant before the eating, but I did not know the reason. When I was looking at the sloka and I was thinking that like eating is such a basic thing for anybody, and everybody understand what is eating, and eating is something gives us existence continuing, the life continuing. Similarly, I think it reminds us without the Brahman, the existence is not going to continue. I was feeling like that. So it is related to the eating, so that everybody can relate and everybody can understand that eating is essential for existence. Similarly, Brahman is also essential for existence.
Correct. Without Brahman, there is no world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And one other thing that, from my personal experience, I found that when I'm chanting the shloka and when I'm reminded of Brahman, right? That moment, that few seconds when I'm chanting, my mind is so calm, just absolutely, there is no other thought. And when it's almost like a preparatory step before I eat. So before I eat, when I'm focused on Brahman, I enjoy my food also even better. Otherwise, you know how it is when we are all in such a hurry and we are trying to, get things done. And then I eat just very fast. The food just doesn't stick to me. I don't enjoy the food. So I think even in that regard, just chanting a few seconds for this beautiful shloka reminds me of, as I mentioned even earlier about the aspect that I'm not this body. I mean, Swami Vivekananda's quote, where he says, when I'm focused on the fact that I'm Brahman, then I recognize, it removes that veil of ignorance that I'm this body. So that's the idea behind. Any other questions or thoughts? Or so Geeta, does that help? Okay. So now the next shlokas are very interesting. They are really, as I mentioned in shloka 24, because it is all about Brahma Drishti, and it is hard for us to see that I am Brahman. So some preparatory sadhanas are prescribed. So these are all preparatory sadhanas. So we said yajna basically means a sacrifice. So what are we really sacrificing? That thought we should think about. You know, I am sacrificing something, but the thought of what I'm sacrificing is I'm actually sacrificing my own ego. Because if you remember, I said ultimately everything starts from that ego. Actually, I had one diagram in my thing. I forgot to put it in today. The whole diagram is, imagine, circles, one in each other. So the outermost circle is all my interaction with the world. I interact with the world in so many different ways, in different roles. Now, where do those roles come from? They are identified with the body. Now, who controls the body? It's the mind that controls the body. Now, who control in that mind? What is the mind? The mind is nothing but a flow of thoughts. In the thought, what is the one factor which is common in every thought? It is nothing but the ego. This I factor, that is the one which is common. So I need to sacrifice that I. If I sacrifice that I, then I'm getting closer to Brahman. So yajna is the act of the sacrifice of that ego. So therefore, all these yajnas have been given. Every yajna is an act of sacrificing that ego, giving up that ego in that fire of that yajna. So that fire, I'm burning that ego. So that is the whole idea behind all these. And again, comparison with that fishes and the birds is that by doing this, I'm not leaving any footprints. I'm not leaving any kind of idea that I was the one who did it. So that's the idea. So I wanted to put this beautiful chart also, which is, I won't attribute this to Swami Guru Bhaktananda, from Divine Life. He had this beautiful thing where he says, in Shloka 24, it is his Brahma Yajna, which is a Yajna where every thought, word and deed, I see only Brahman. And then in Shloka 25, there is the Yajna of the Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda part of it, where he says the actions, I'm sacrificing my actions. And then how are the studies, what does that mean here? Then in the same 25, there is, I mentioned earlier about this Brahma Drishti. This is one of the yajnas which helps me go closer to the Brahma Drishti. Brahma Yajna, where it is a Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the performer here. The ego is the one which is given up. And then in the next shlokas, you have the Shat Sampatti. Shat Sampatti, if you remember, which are the six, the Shama, Dhamma, Uparati, Titiksha, Samadhana, Shraddha, Mumukshutva, those six of them. Those are the ones which I'm practicing. So again, these are sadhanas to give up that ego, so that is given by which you see the sense organs are controlled, the sense of how do I control the sense objects, etc. And then Dravya Yajna, Tapo Yajna, then 28, you have these yajnas. Of course, this might be a little boring at this point because it's too wordy, but we will come to this. I just wanted to give you an overview to start with, that these are all the 12 yajnas, which are nothing but sadhanas, which are we'll be looking at one at a time. So I'll be putting this slide before each of these yajna, each of the set of yajnas, to remind us again what are all the yajnas which is being done here. So shloka number 25, is as a continuation of 24. In 24, it is all about, think about Brahman 24/7, every second. But somebody might come back and say, it is so hard for me to do this. It's so hard for me to think about Brahman and everything. So what should I really do? So that is why we have this particular yajnas in 25. Daivameva pare yajnam. Daivameva pare yajnam. Yoginah paryupasate. Yoginah paryupasate. Brahmagnavapare yajnam. Brahmagnavapare yajnam. Yajnenaivopajuhvati. Yajnenaivopajuhvati. Daivameva pare yajnam. Yoginah paryupasate. Brahmagnavapare yajnam. Yajnenaivopajuhvati. So here he's talking about sacrificing to the gods, Agni or Gayatri alone. Some yogis perform the act of sacrifice. Sacrificing to Brahman, others, some other yogis, they offer their Jivatman as a sacrifice. So Daivam, the deities, Eva, Apare meaning some of the yogis. So those yogis, they offer to the deities, to these gods, whereas some others, Brahmagna, they offer the self. This is the other yogis, they offer Yajnam, they offer the self, and in this manner, they engage in the world. So that is the idea behind here. So let's look at this a little more deeper as to what are Deva Yajnas. So Deva Yajnas are basically all kinds of rituals. These rituals are either prescribed by the Shruti, by the Smriti, or the Puranas. So Shruti is indicating all the Upanishads and everything. So in the Shruti, we have this, Indriya Swaha, Varunaya Swaha, all these are mentioned in the Upanishads. So these are Shruti Vedokta Yajnas. Then we have in the Smritis, like the Manusmritis or anything, we have talked about this before too. There are this 5 Yajnas, the Pitra Yajna, the Brahma Yajna, the Bhuta Yajna. So all those are also in this category of Deva Yajnas. Then even rituals like, which are discussed in the Puranas, or even this Pada Puja, for example, or Ganesha Puja, all these, which are worship of the different gods, all these are also considered yajnas. So these are all called as actually Deva Yajnas. But the whole idea behind these yajnas is that even as I'm doing these worships, even as I'm doing all these pujas and everything, the idea is, even though I'm performing to those gods, but at the end of the day, is that it is Parameshwara Prityartham. I'm doing this only for the love of God. And this actually will help us purify our minds. So that is the Deva Yajnas that is being talked about in this particular thing of what the Deva Yajnas mean. So it covers the whole gamut of sacrifices, whole gamut of pujas, all the way from praying to Ganesha, Shiva, etc. And then also the highest level of Indra, Varuna, but also the pujas that we do, like Pada pujas for great Mahatmas and etc. But ultimately, the idea is that may the Lord, who is the self in all beings, may that Brahman, which is there in everyone, may that Brahman in the form of Ishvara be pleased. That's the idea in this Deva Yajna. Now, Brahma Yajna is a little of the higher version where I am actually offering myself. I am offering my own self in that fire. So I'm offering my own ego, my own aspect of an ego in that, saying that, like for example, this Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham, or Tad Brahma Nishkalam Nacha Bhuta Sangaha Pratasmarami Shloka. We chant this, Pratasmarami Priti Samspuradatma Tattvam Satchit Sukham Paramahamsagatim Turiyam, and we end with that Nishkalam Nacha Bhuta Sangaha, not this assemblage of envelopments. So in that way, this yajna is performed. So it is more or less a meditative yajna, where I'm seeing my own oneness with everybody. I'm seeing my oneness, and I'm saying that I'm not this body, mind, intellect. So it is also one of the highest forms of the yajna among the 12 yajnas, where the thought or identity of myself, I'm trying to dissolve it with this thought that I'm that Brahman. So that is the idea here. So it's a little different than the 24th shloka. There, it is the yajna of the highest enlightened person. Whereas these yajnas are some things that we need to practice. So there is both in this shloka that was given, which was, one is the pujas and everything, and the second thing is this meditation on that absolute self, Brahma Yajna. So moving on to shloka number 26, we find that there might be somebody who might say that, well, I just cannot sit and meditate on Smarami Shruti Samspurada. It is too difficult. I just cannot, the minute I sit down to sit for meditation, immediately the thought of, oh, I have to do this, or I didn't do this, only that comes to my mind. So I really cannot sit down. So Brahma Yajna is out for me. Now, Deva Yajnas, well, I really don't have time to do any pujas and any of the stuff what you're talking about. So give me something really, really simple, I think I'm okay with that. So we have now Lord Krishna, who's saying, okay, don't worry. You just do what you're doing. That's all. Whatever you're doing, just keep on doing it. So through what I'm doing, he's saying that, try to develop the control. So this is where this whole Shat Sampatti, the Shama, Dhamma, etc. comes into play. And that's what is described in this shloka number 26. Shrotra-dinindriyananye, Shrotra-dinindriyananye. I'll say this one more time. Shrotra-dinindriyananye, Sanyamagnishu Jukvati, Sanyamagnishu Jukvati, Shabdadin Vishayananye. Even though it is n plus year, you have to say it as ye, because of that sandals here. Whenever you have that vowel which comes followed by e, then that is convert that joint is an a. So plus e is a, right? So that's why the second line you have the y and the e, but you have to pronounce it as ye. So it is Shabdadin Vishayan, Shabdadin Vishayananye, Indriyagnishu Jukvati, Shrotra-din indriyanyanye, Sanyamagnishu Jukvati, Shabdadin Vishayananye, Indriyagnishu Jukvati. So again, two more yajnas here. Some offer hearing and other senses as sacrifice in the fire of restraint of the mind. So Jukvati is that offering. Sanyam Agni, which is a fire. Sanyam Agni is the restraint of the mind or the control of the mind. So some offer Shrotra Deen Indriyan. So some offer hearing, Shrotra. Adi meaning etc. Other senses. Indriyani means the senses. While some others, Anye, others, they offer Shabda Adi. That is Shabda meaning the sound, the faculty of the sound, Adi, etc. Indriya, again in the senses, Agnishu Juhvati. So others offer sound and other sense objects as sacrifice in the fire of the control. So that is what he's trying to say here. So again, as I mentioned earlier, the shloka number 25 might seem very difficult. So here the idea is, it is for people like all of us who are attracted to the world. You know, we are attracted to the sense pleasures. So this yajna is kind of a sincere effort to give up those sense pleasures. So as a kind of a sacrifice, and as how it can be burnt away. So we know that control of the sense is necessary because we live in this world. We live in this world, and the world is constantly tempting us in one form or the other. Even as we are getting to a stage where we think we have to start giving up, you see that something like the iPhone, right? iPhone 13 is in the market now. And even while 13 is in the market, where they tempt you with, you can do, and it's so interesting when you look at all these gadgets, they're constantly putting in things onto the gadgets to tell us that your life is, you can make it very simple. Like, in the iPhone that I have here, you can have 10 or different things where you can put it for control, right? But the idea is our life is also so fast. We are just not able to control what is happening, right? We tend to still, we think, okay, this next iPhone is going to help me even be better. But you see how they trap you into all these things. So this whole idea is to say that, we need to have control in our lives, and therefore this whole two things is given here. By offering sound, first, this is an idea. First is to recognize that these sense objects and the sense organs are to be controlled. So to be given up, or to be not given up in the sense of totally, saying that, okay, from now on, I'm not going to be doing it. But to say that at least I'm going to be detaching, even as I'm indulging in it, but to recognize that I'm not getting attracted, so it doesn't develop even more vasanas. So that's the idea behind doing this. And then in shloka number 27, we go to a little more of the Shat Sampatti, where we are looking at the Atma Sanyama, which is again this aspect of self-control. Sarvan Indriya Karmani, Sarvan Indriya Karmani, Prana Karmani Chapare, Prana Karmani Chapare, Atma Sanyama Yogagno, Atma Sanyama Yogagno, Juhvati Jnana Deepite, Juhvati Jnana Deepite, Sarvani Indriya Karmani, Prana Karmani Chapare, Atma Sanyama Yogagno, Juhvati Jnana Deepite. So here he's talking about giving up all the functions of the senses, sarvani, all functions of the senses, as well as the functions of the pranas. Pranas are the 5 pranas which we talk about, not just pranayama, but prana karma into the fire of the master of the mind, uparati. So you have Shama and Dhamma was taken care of in the other one. Here we have the uparati, which is again another form of where I'm even giving up this idea of who I am, the role I play. So Atma Samyama Yogagnam Jukvati Prana Dipite. So again, the idea is through proper discrimination, controlling my activities of my organs, and this idea of whatever is the sense, whatever is the force of the pranas. So all of them giving up ownership for that, and sacrificing this in the fire of the yajna. So that is the idea behind the Sarvani Indriya Karmani, Prana Karmani Chapare, Atma Sanyama Yogagnam in Jukvati Jnana Dipite. And then moving on to shloka number 28. Here we see again some more of the yajnas. We'll quickly at least read the shloka and we'll go into a little more detail next week. Dravya yajnas tapo yajnaha. Dravya yajnas tapo yajnaha. Yoga yajnas tatha pare. Yoga yajnas tatha pare. Swadhyaya jnana yajnascha. Swadhyaya yajna yajnascha. I'll do it one more time. There are too many years there. Swadhyaya yajna. Swadhyaya, I said it right the first time. I'm messing up 2 times now. Swadhyaya yajna yajnascha.
Is it yajna, Sunitha? Is it Gyan Yajna? Swadhyaya Gyan Yajna?
Swadhyaya. You are absolutely right, Meenu. You are right. It is Swadhyaya Yajna. I'm sorry. Swadhyaya Jnana Yajnascha. It is there in the English. In the English, it is very clear, but in the transliteration, it's a little difficult. Let me read it again. So, Swadhyaya Jnana Yajnascha. Swadhyaya Jnana Yajnascha. Yataya Samshita Vrataha. Yataya Samshita Vrataha. When you read the Sanskrit and the transliteration, because of the number of years, you have to break it up. But you can see here how by breaking up the English part of it. So thank you, Meenu. Dravya yajnas tapo yajnaha. Yoga yajnas tatha pare. Swadhyaya jnana yajnascha. Yataya samshita vrataha. So here we have literally 5 yajnas which are talked about. One is Dravya Yajna, one is Tapo Yajna, then Swadhyaya Yajna, Jnana Yajna, and Yoga Yajna. So 5 yajnas, and it needs a little more discussion on each one of them, and we will see how this is connected. But in a sense, it is trying to tell us about Dravya Yajna, which is actually charity, Tapo Yajna, which is the austerity, and then Yoga Yajna. Again, this is yoga as in the yogasanas which we do. That is, he's going to talk about that. Then Swadhyaya is the aspect of the studies, the study of the scriptures. How is that a yajna? You know, that question may arise. So we will discuss about that too. And then ultimately the Jnana Yajna, the knowledge sacrifice. So we will discuss about all of them next week. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sunitha.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sunitha.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you, Sunitha ji.
Thank you.
So, Amlan, I will, if you need the PDF of the presentation, like I said, I'll start creating the Google Drive, and Jayashri has always asked me for this, and I always
It's okay,
somehow
Sunitha ji.
just never find the time. It's a simple thing of doing a PDF, but
No
I'll
problem. Take your time.
And Amlan,
Yeah,
I'm still
and
working on a
also,
document.
also, can you add Sriram in the group so
Yes,
that we
yes,
get the?
yes.
I send you his contact number.
Yes, you certainly did. I will add that today itself. I'll do that.
Yeah, and also I wanted to tell this word sacrifice is coming so many times.
Yes.
Can you elaborate that word a little bit more next time? Today there's no time. Maybe next time, for the benefit of everybody,
Yes.
elaborate that word. That sacrifice, it sounds to us that giving up something, but it has a broader meaning here. It is sacrifice is not only that, it is selfless activity, perspective of so many different perspective. So can you elaborate on that a little bit next class?
I'll do that. I can do that. We in chapter 3, it had come, the word yajna had come. At that time, we had talked a lot about this aspect, but it becomes deeper, So Bhagavad Gita, as you go from one chapter to another, I'm sorry, I have to first stop the thing,
Oh, recording?